Welcome back to the Riichi Mahjong guide. So in the past few videos, we've covered most of the yaku that you'll commonly see in a game of Riichi Mahjong. But the yaku only really matter if someone wins the hand. It is possible for a game to use up all the tiles in the live wall and have no one complete their hand. So this is one such example. In this case, you are east and the player who is north to your left just dealt the hote and no one was able to win off of it. So the game ends because there are now only the 14 tiles left of the dead wall. This is called a Ryuukyoku, or a drawn game. So what happens at this point is that everyone will declare whether or not they were in tenpai or they were in noten. And if they were in tenpai, they reveal their hand. If they were in noten, they just set their hand down. If you declared Riichi, you must show your hand to prove that you were in tenpai. But otherwise, you have the choice, if you are in tenpai, to choose to conceal your hand and just say that you were in noten. Technically, you have to go around the table in player order, starting with east, declaring tenpai or noten. But in practice, everyone just does this at the same time. In this case, there are two players who are in tenpai. So now, the player or players who are in noten have to pay a small amount called the noten penalty, or the noten payment, to the player or players who were in tenpai. Of course, if everyone's in noten or everyone's in tenpai, then no one has to pay anyone. But in this case, two players were noten and two players were tenpai. So the two players who are noten have to pay the two players who are in tenpai. How this works is that there's a set amount for the noten payment, and usually that's 3,000 points. So a total of 3,000 points is paid from the player or players who were noten to the player or players who were tenpai. So in this case, with 2 and 2, the two noten players each pay 1,500 points to one of the players who were in tenpai. So for instance, the player who was south, who was in noten, might pay 1,500 to the player who was east, who was in tenpai, and the player who was west, who was in noten, might pay 1,500 to the player who was north, who was tenpai. So it's just a total amount of 3,000. As another example, if only one player was tenpai, then each player who is noten has to pay 1,000 to the player who is tenpai, for a total of 3,000. And conversely, if just one player was noten and all the other three players were tenpai, the noten player has to pay 1,000 each to the players who are tenpai. So after the payments are made, that's the end of the game, and you have to determine whether or not the winds rotate. At the very beginning of this series, we talked a little bit about how if you win a game as east, you stay east. That is usually also true for if the game ends in a draw like this, and you are in tenpai as east. In either case, you get that renchan, and you have to put a marker on the table called a Honba, which is used to indicate the number of renchan. This is always a 100-point stick, which is placed by east's right side. If east wins the hand, an additional Honba is placed, or if there is a Ryuukyoku, there is a Honba placed, regardless of whether or not east was in tenpai or stays east. So in this case, east was in tenpai, so they get to continue being east, and they add one Honba. If this were not the case, then the winds would rotate and the new east would add the Honba. The number of Honba can keep increasing in this way as long as east continues to win, or as long as there are Ryuukyoku. However, if any player who is not east wins a hand, the number of Honba reset to 0 from the next hand. And then there's the matter of the Riichi stick, because no one had won that hand. This will go by east's right side, whether it's the same east or the new east after winds rotate, next to the Honba. And the next player to win a hand gets that 1,000 point stick. So that adds value to the next hand that is won. The Honba also add a little bit of value to the next hand that is won. For every Honba on the board, the value of the next hand is increased by 300. The exact way that this works will be discussed in the detailed scoring video, but essentially you just remember that every Honba out increases the value of the hand by 300. Alright, this was another short video, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and thank you for watching.